like to just take a minute and have everyone focus. It's kind of strange for me to be here. Richard and Maureen were friends of mine over a period of about 30 years, and so it's strange to be coming back without Richard being here. And so just a moment to hold Maureen in our hearts and in love, and Richard on his journey just, of course you know how high he could fly, so I'm sure he's doing it. We want to talk this morning about what's called the Lord's Prayer, as though prayer, which our culture kind of teaches, is putting your order into the cosmic gift catalog, which it is not. And to highlight the importance of that idea, I'd like to kind of set a scene for you. And I'm going to ask you to imagine that you are the best translator of Russian into English and English into Russian in the world. You are absolutely the best. And when this workshop series was announced, the church got an email from a gentleman from Russia who wanted to come and experience this week of workshops. And knowing that you were this translator and that you have an extra room in your house, we asked if you would mind picking this person up at the airport, housing them, translating for them, and getting them back to the airport safely when the workshops were over. You were delighted to do that, and so we end up spending a week with this person. You know, we go out for dinner once or twice, and we just have a great time with him, and you're translating all the way. And as he's getting ready to leave, I really want to convey my sincere appreciation for him. And so I asked if you would please tell this gentleman as he's leaving that I think he's really cool. And you turn to him in your best Russian and tell him that I think he's got a low body temperature. You translated my words perfectly. You translated something about temperature, but you said nothing about what I meant. And you certainly said nothing that's going to lead to any intelligent conversation based on what I meant. The reason that you didn't say a word about what I meant is because I used an idiom. An idiom is something that you simply have to know the meaning of. You can't translate. You can have the most awesome translators in the world, but if the word that's being used is an idiom, going to a dictionary and finding meanings means nothing. Vladimir Lenin, a man who's responsible for the death of millions in the world in the last few decades, said the way you destroy a culture is to change the meaning of its words. Because when you can change the meaning of a word, first of all, you cannot communicate accurately about that meaning. And people who do not have accurate meanings for words cannot think properly about the topic at hand. Plato said, let me define the words and I'll end the argument. We want to look at this idea of prayer as it comes from the original Aramaic. And when you start to see the first century meanings, for those who might not know this, I'm the director of a foundation that's translating a copy of the oldest known New Testament in its original Aramaic language into English. And the Aramaic New Testament is a text about physics, it's a text about physiology, it's a text about psychology, and it's a text about genetics. It's anything but theology. People came along and changed the meanings of words and created a whole theological system that, by and large, keeps people in a lot of terror and trauma and doesn't do a whole lot for functioning as a human being. The first word that I'd like to clean up the definition of is human being. Most people think if it gets up and it walks and it talks, then it's human. My offering is that's a fraud. That's not true. Just because one has a human form does not mean that one has a human life. Two different things. How many here have ever held a newborn child? If I were to ask you to go back to that first instant when you held a newborn, and you were to tap into the essence of that newborn, and in a single word, define the essence of that newborn, what would your word be?
Awesome.
Awesome. Love. Purity.
Wonder.
Wonder. Sweetness. When my daughter was born, her head delivered into my hands. And they say you can't focus in the first couple of days of life. Her eyes were laser focused into my eyes, and she grinned at me and sent me into another universe. You want to talk about the pure presence of love, and that's it. Now, Jeannie and I have asked this question about the newborn of tens of thousands of people all over the globe. And 100% of the time, everybody's definition of that newborn is some variation on the theme of love. Why? I want to offer the reason is because that's human life. Everybody knows what it is. But where do you find it? In a world that specializes in putting such deep, painful thumbprints on us that human life is lost. A human form where there is not the active presence of love is not human. A human form where we function out of something other than love is functioning out of a false life. The false life that Yeshua said, in order for you, human, to live, you, non-human, have to die. What is non-human in us?
Fear.
The very capacity for any form of hostility or fear takes us into the non-human realm. Now, when you go to the Aramaic, what's called the Lord's Prayer, first of all, you don't find a prayer there. We've been taught a fraud. Oh, say these words and you're praying. Excuse me. Praying is not putting your order into the cosmic gift catalog and telling God what God should be doing for you today. That is anything but prayer. In fact, if we listen to Yeshua's words, by the way, the man who's commonly known as Jesus, his name was not Hail Zeus, Jesus. His name was Yeshua. And if we listen to him in Matthew 6, 5 to 8, here's what he says. He says, "And when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and in the street corners to be seen by men. I tell you the truth, they have received their reward in full. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father in heaven who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is," listen to this word, "what is done." Notice he doesn't say, "who hears what you said." Your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. And when you pray, do not keep on babbling like the pagans, for they think they will be heard because of their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask. Properly defined, asking the Creator for something is petition. Nothing to do with prayer. When we think that prayer is putting the order into the cosmic gift catalog, and you just listen throughout the culture, and what we have are Greek ideas supplanted in the mind of Yeshua. If Yeshua sat in most churches today in this country, he would say, "That's all Greek to me." That's not what I thought. That's not what I taught at all. So he tells us here that this thing called prayer is a doing of something. Now you'll notice the instruction set that he gave came in response to a request, a question. And the question was, teach us to pray. Now, if you listen to Yeshua in Matthew 6, do you think that when they said teach us to pray, they were saying teach us to babble, teach us words to say? I would offer that is not what they were asking. If you can't define the word, you can't logically, sensibly, or correctly think about the topic. They said, teach us to pray. Now, if you were to ask somebody to teach you something, would you expect they would give you instructions, or they would do that something? Let's imagine we ask our music director to teach us to sing. Is she going to break into an aria? Or is she going to give us some instructions on how to sing? How to accomplish what we've asked for instruction in? Well, you're going to have to decide what you're going to sing. You're going to have to decide what instruments you're going to have. Here are some exercises to open your throat and expand your vocal capacity. So we're going to get instructions on how to sing. If we listen to Yeshua in his first century Aramaic, he tells us how to pray. He doesn't tell us how to put our order into the cosmic gift catalog. Well, Michael, what's this word prayer mean then? Well, you're probably going to be a little shocked when you first hear it. Because it's so far removed from what your culture has told you. The disciples were asking him how to do something. Remember that passage in Matthew? Your Father who sees what is done. They're asking, how do you do this thing? What is this thing? Well, in the Aramaic language, prayer means to set a trap for God. I mean, talk about a foreign idea. What do you mean to set a trap for God? Well, when you recognize that we are not physical beings, but that we are energetic beings, then energy systems capture or trap energy. We had a television set up here, and we wanted to watch Channel 2. We turned the television set on, and if we had a trap for Channel 2, what do we call that trap? It's called an antenna. If there's an antenna on the roof, and the antenna is oriented properly, we're going to get a clear picture and clear sound. What if somebody went up on the roof and bent all the arms of the antenna? Would we expect to have a clear picture and clear sound?
No.
No, it would be distorted. Or some of you, and you'll be giving away your age if you do, remember when you wanted to move from, say, Channel 2 to Channel 4, you had a little crank and you turned it. Anybody remember that? And when you turned the crank, the antenna on your roof turned. And all of a sudden, the snowy, weak picture of Channel 4 came in crisp and clear. The antenna had to be oriented properly to receive the energy of Channel 4 so that you could see a clear picture and have clear sound. Yeshua taught the disciples, gave the disciples a set of instructions for how to orient themselves to human life. Your human form, of all the forms on planet Earth, your human form is a device designed to be oriented in such a way that it receives, captures, or traps the active presence of love and brings it into the world. Now, you'll notice that you get all kinds of support for that from the world, right? From the politicians, and from the television set, and from the universities, and from the churches. Well, some of them. You're in the right one. So, when they said to Yeshua, teach us to pray, they weren't saying teach us to babble. How do we do this thing? How do we become oriented so that we are the space where the active presence of love shows up in the world? Especially when the stress is up and the chips are down. Anybody here ever had any conflict in any of your relationships? Show of hands. 2 hands and feet back there. Okay, we got the right group. What happened to your human life when the stress was up and the chips are down? Your human life was gone. You lost the capacity to be the trap for love, to be the space where love showed up in the world. And it is your most basic human design. And what Yeshua was instructing his disciples on, what Yeshua responded to, was an instruction set for how to be that space regardless of what's happening in the world. You remember Yeshua says, oh, I'm in this world, but I'm not of it. I am a trap for God. I am a trap. I am the offspring. I am a human form fulfilling a human purpose. I bring the active presence of love into the world. And it's interesting, the Aramaic words that the Greeks translated as the only begotten Son of God, in Aramaic says the first begotten. He says, the things I do, you can do in greater. You can stand in the front of the most horrible trauma in the world, and if you have the instruction set and do what it says, then you will face the most horrific challenges and traumas, and you will face them from that space of being love, that space of a human life. When Susan introduced me, that's what she was talking about. I used to function from hostility or fear. I've learned to remove my hostility or fear, and I function from a place of human life, from a place of peace, from a place of active love. So this is the instruction set that was given. Now, you look at what's been called the beloved King James Version of the Bible. We were in a parking lot a couple of years ago, and there was a truck that had a bumper sticker on it that said, if it isn't the King James, it's not the Bible. So here's a man who says, know the truth and the truth will set you free. Here's the king sitting on top of all the wealth in England. Everybody's funneling it up to him. How many think he actually wants you to actually know what the man who said, know the truth and the truth will set you free? How many think he really wants you to know that? Good luck. So what Yeshua gave us was how to do this. So you notice he didn't say, well, say these words and everything will be cool. He says, pray in this way, and then he gives us that instruction set. And when we live out of that active condition of love as true human beings, that is the source of everything you could ever want in the world. That is the space out of which your most powerful creatorship comes. If you are in a different space than that, then you will create something different in your life. You will create what you don't want instead of what you do want. So he's given us a very specific instruction set on how to orient yourself as a literal antenna. My background's electronics with a side study in physics. The bony structure of this thing is an antenna. And when you align yourself properly, then the active presence of love, because you are moving through space at about 7,000 miles an hour, and we know that when two energy fields that have matching atomic magnetic structures meet and move through each other, they transfer energy. When you align properly, that transfer will take place, and every cell in your structure will sing out with the active presence of love. Just because you exist in alignment with your human life. Not because anybody did anything for you, not because you got anything. But just because you have the active presence of a human life in you. Your birthright is that every cell sings in the delight, literally, of the active presence of love. Just like the newborn. You're designed to live there. 24/7, 365. And so what I'm going to invite you to do is I'm going to invite you to close your eyes for a moment, and we're going to go back to the Sea of Galilee. We're going to be sitting on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, and we're going to listen to Yeshua in his native Aramaic language present to us the Lord's instruction set for living as love. And then I'm going to share an interpretation of that for today's age and time. The physicists tell us that time does not exist as we perceive it. And that space is not what we've been taught it is. And so I'm going to invite you at this moment to imagine yourself, literally, sitting on the shores of the Sea of Galilee. I'm going to invite you to imagine yourself disappearing my voice and allowing the voice of Yeshua to share with you this Aramaic instruction set on how to orient yourself and align yourself so that you live as the active presence of love. This instruction set is designed to empower you to live in that space as your essential nature. It is faithful to the instructions Yeshua gave 2,000 years ago in his native Aramaic. And once we've heard his Aramaic words, and forgive my accent is not all that great in the Aramaic, but it won't be my voice you're listening to, it'll be his. And then we're going to step into an English rendition of this instruction set for today's world. So an interpretation, as it were, as opposed to a translation of what would that instruction set. What is it that, as was said in Matthew, your Father experiencing what you're doing will reward you? And so allow yourself to just take a deep breath. Imagine you're sitting on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. And you listen to his voice, not mine. Abun v'shme'ah, nit kadash shmach, te'etei malkuta, netwe seviana, ekana, v'shme'ah akbar'ah. Hoglan lak ma dusam kana, yomana. Washwaklan chabein, ekena dapnan shwakin hayawain. Ula te'elun el nisyona. Ila pestan min bisha. Mito ditkake melkuta. Wahe la teshbukta. Lalan. Amin. Amen. And so just let the energy of his voice permeate, attune to and align with the presence that he is for you. Literally, energy structures that are in resonance or alignment with each other contribute to the orientation of each other. So imagine yourself for just a moment. You take a couple of deep breaths. And the power of his presence permeates every cell of your structure, opening the space for anything to be removed that does not belong in your structure, and bringing your structure into alignment with that awesome, active presence of love that he said was the world he was from and inspired us to. And then, as you follow this instruction set, imagine how you're going to integrate it and live it in your life so that you literally become the trap for love. The space where the active presence of love shows up in the world 24/7, 365. Allow yourself to be oriented by the energy of these words. Our eternal Creator, parent to us all, who is in the realms of the unmanifest, make a space in us for the wholeness that you hold, that we may be taught to honor, emulate, and serve that love. Let your counsel your wisdom, and your love come alive in us. Let your light penetrate us, attune us to, and empower us to conceive of and understand that will which you have already created for us. Teach us that we may give birth to your fruit. That you renew and feed us daily with the presence of your love, the love of each other, and the food we receive is a gift we gratefully accept. Thank you for restoring us to abundance, teaching us gratitude, and how to give as you give, and presence love as you are the presence of love, for the just and the unjust. That you forgive from us those realities we've engaged in that do us harm and do not belong in our humanness is another of your blessings we appreciate. We commit to responsibility and forgiving as to those painful realities that others trigger in us. When we are tempted or lost in materialism or fall out of harmony with the truth of our being, that you are there with us, being the space of love, that your love is always present no matter how far we fall, no matter where we go, is a blessing we gratefully receive. That with your grace, you deliver us from our errors, and through your light, part us from darkness, is another blessing that flows from your presence. We receive each of these gifts with gratitude and praise, sealed in trust and faith. Amen. Amen. Namaste.